Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Zrinka, for this kind introduction. It's such an honor to be able to welcome you all, both virtually and in person, finally, to this gathering on ethno-religious interaction in Premodern Iberia. As we're kicking off the conference, I thought that I'd first take a few moments to contextualize the conference's theme before turning to recognize all of the sponsors and collaborators without whom we would not be gathered here today. In 1973, Father R.I. Burns published his career-making book, Islam Under the Crusaders, on the existence of Muslims living under Christian rule in the 13th century kingdom of Valencia, a work that facilitated his move from the University of San Francisco to UCLA, later helping pave the way for Teo Ruiz, his own faithful move here from Brooklyn College. In the half century between that initial important shift at UCLA and now, the study of pre-modern Iberia and the Western Mediterranean has transformed from a relatively neglected peripheral area of study into one of the most intensively researched and hotly debated fields within history and various associated disciplines. Part of this transformation clearly has to do with the unparalleled archival resources available in parts of the peninsula, and most notably within the former lands of the Crown of Aragon and Eastern Iberia. But there are other attractions. Because of its history of division among Muslim and Christian rule regimes and integration within the Mediterranean environment, Iberian history is more innately transnational, or even what we might call global, than most other regions of Europe. It also, of course, featured significantly greater religious pluralism. While a significant subset of this seminal work over these decades as Iberia has shifted from the periphery to the center has addressed a diversity of topics on social and institutional history, it's fair to say that the workings of ethno-religious pluralism have attracted the greatest attention and excitement, especially among Anglo-American scholarship. Why is this the case? I have a few thoughts. Over 2 decades ago, Paul Friedman and Gabriel Spiegel co-wrote a well-known article in the American Historical Review on alterity in pre-modern studies that, among other things, examined the tension exhibited by Anglo-American medievalist scholarship between reveling in the otherness of the pre-modern, while also still underscoring its foundational relationship with modern societies. The study of Iberian and Western Mediterranean ethno-religious interactions, it seems to me, has benefited from this tension. While we can observe continuities in the historical institutions and human behavioral patterns that allow us to understand them as prefiguring to a certain degree modern discriminatory systems, racial categorizations and intolerance, and majority privilege and notions of majority supremacy, there are many aspects of the society we study that remind us that these worlds operated quite differently from our own, and that we should resist the urge to make simplistic comparisons or direct connections between then and now. I had these complications very much in mind when I first conceived of the idea of putting together a conference on the mechanisms and trajectories of pre-modern ethno-religious relations within Iberia and the Western Mediterranean. It was the summer of 2020, as a nation and world were reeling from the trifecta of the pandemic, Trump's troubling presidency, and the movements for social justice ushered in by the murder of George Floyd. Like many scholars during that unprecedented, deeply unsettling period, these impassioned calls for lasting, meaningful change to reverse the pernicious effects of discriminatory systems that pervade modern societies encouraged me to reconsider what insights we might draw from our own work on pre-modern accommodation and intolerance. I felt impelled to ask what aspects of this history indirectly or even directly prefigured these ingrained problems we face today, and what elements were largely, if not entirely, peculiar to the pre-modern world, especially in light of recent debates prompted by the work of Geraldine Heng, David Nirenberg, and other scholars over the role pre-modern society should play in a longer history of the emergence of discriminatory biological racial categorizations. While these may not be inquiries that we address explicitly in our papers today, we are all clearly engaging with these sorts of broader questions implicitly in our work on later medieval and early modern ethno-religious interaction, as I was when I formulated the conference description. And I hope that we can devote some attention to these important topics as we discuss and ruminate over the implications of our work over the next 2 days. My underscoring of mechanisms and trajectories in the title for this conference represents an effort to draw attention to the locally individuated nature of the workings, modification, and violent breakdown of systems of ethno-religious pluralism. All of these are topics that have been revolutionized by the research produced by what I would call the two patron saints of this conference, Mark Meyerson and David Nirenberg, both of whom, sadly, despite their best efforts, are unable to join us today. And I told each of them that they will nevertheless be here in spirit through the influence of their works. While Mark and David are clearly beneficiaries of the excitement about the foundational otherness of Premodern Iberia conjured by many pioneering Anglo-American and European scholars, their work has brought a considerably higher level of theoretical sophistication to the study of the workings and breakdown of ethno-religious coexistence. I had various forms of 14th century ethno-religious violence in general and the anti-Jewish pogroms of 1391 in particular on my mind when I conceptualized this conference, because there are topics that both Mark and David have concentrated on in their work. But there are many other contexts in which we can explore other sorts of mechanisms and trajectories as the papers to be presented today and tomorrow will demonstrate. Now, I'm a firm believer that the job of a historian is chiefly to complicate rather than to clarify. Accordingly, I view these proceedings as an effort to participate in and contribute to a messy ongoing conversation that will continue to evolve as we change in the future. So if we emerge from these 2 days having learned some things about our respective works and differences of opinion and perspective, with a stronger sense of the diversity and dizzying intricacy of ethno-religious pluralism in these settings, then I will consider our mission to have been accomplished. While the inspiration provided by our patron saints is vital for motivating us to put together a gathering such as this, the actual work of planning and coordinating required a long list of helpers and donors whom I'd like to thank, just take a moment to thank before I conclude. I'd first like to thank our co-sponsors. First and foremost, the CMRS CEGS, which provided almost half of the funding that has made this gathering possible. Professor and former history chair Carla Pestana and current chair Kevin Teresiano and the entire history department for exceedingly generous support. Dean David Skaberg and the UCLA Division of Humanities, former Dean and current Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost Darnell Hunt in the UCLA Division of Social Sciences, Professor Ali Badad of the Near Eastern Studies Program, and Professor Asma Saeed of the Islamic Studies Program, all contributed very generously. Of course, funding isn't the only thing one needs to put together a complex event like this. There's a lot of heavy lifting throughout the almost over, I can't quite remember now, but basically 2 years of we spent planning and organizing. And throughout that process, the staff at SEGS was really just critical. I'd like to recognize in particular Karen Burgess and Aaron Romo, both of whom helped me in innumerable ways with advice, bookings, a million other things, in addition to giving me very helpful advice. Aaron has worked especially hard these past 2 weeks to put everything together. So I can't take any credit for all of the luxury accommodations and other things you guys have benefited from over the past day. Brett Landenberger did a wonderful job on the webpage, which he graciously and cheerfully, I should say, revised numerous times at my behest and was very helpful with various technical issues. I'd also like to recognize my friend and colleague, Zrinka, for having faith in the concept underlying this gathering that I proposed back in 2020, and for always being willing to take time out of her busy schedule, whether she was in Croatia with her family, France on a book tour, or here in LA attending to teaching, administration, a million other responsibilities, to offer sage advice or a helping hand, or just some well-needed moral support as I forged ahead with the planning and coordinating. She's been an essential advocate, writing or sending out numerous funding request emails on my behalf. I have to say, Zrinka really is the truly energetic, visionary leader that the CMRS has needed for so long, as evidenced by her tireless work to lead the center into the 21st century by transforming it into the more inclusive Center for Early Global Studies. Her use of research axes to encourage creative cross-pollination amongst disciplines, methodologies, and modes of inquiry has already facilitated so many creative, inspiring conferences, seminars, and pedagogical programs during her brief tenure as director, and I can't wait to see what she does over her next term. Then there's Taylor Reese, who now we can name him. In the last conference, he was Voldemort, and we could not be named, but now we can name him. So, who has been here the entire way to offer me support, guidance, plenty of virtual hugs, a few physical hugs, and even some of his own research funds to make this conference happen. Although hopefully we don't need those in the end. Taylor, you're an inspiration to us all. I feel so fortunate to have these opportunities to interact and collaborate with you. I would also like to thank Mark Meyerson for offering to give what would have been a glorious plenary address on Conversos, for having to withdraw due to a family health emergency, and deliver as a plenary on very short notice. And thanks to all the presenters for coming from near and far to share your work. And as a final note, I'd also like to recognize all the colleagues who generously agreed to serve as chairs for each of our 6 sessions. And especially Doran for being a real mensch by moderating the concluding discussion tomorrow while on sabbatical, I should note this. So doesn't have to be here. And he just submitted his tenure file. So yeah, huge props to you. I can't express how honored I am to have so many of you here presenting or attending in person or via Zoom. I really look forward to learning from and with you over the coming 2 days, and we'll be really reveling in this opportunity to meet and collaborate face to face once again after such a long and draining period apart during the pandemic. So thanks everyone, and let the conferencing begin.